Hi guys. Um, it's me again. Full disclosure, I have the giggles today. This is like the fifth time I've tried to record this video. Um, but anyway, I know last week I promised you guys that I would share probably the hardest part of my testimony in the second part of this series called The Loneliness of. This week is going to be The Loneliness of an Empty God. And so here we go again. Okay. So, I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit about my testimony. I I grew up in the church, or a church rather, um, and until about fifth or sixth grade, I had a really good relationship with him. I would read the kids' Bible. I would, go to Sunday school. I really enjoyed the big city jungle church that I was a part of. And then in seventh grade, eighth grade, all that kind of changed. In addition to just family stuff going on, I started to have a lot of really, really bad, like demonic nightmares. And they like originally started way back in fifth grade, but I just kind of try to deal with them, you know how kids do. Um, but At one point, I think it was halfway through my seventh grade year going into eighth grade, so probably that summer, um, I got really angry with God, and I got really fed up with, just how much I was facing, not just like spiritually, but at home too. And I just said, okay, if you're not going to protect me, God, I'm going to protect myself. You know how seventh and eighth graders are prone to do. So, um, me and my friend at the time started looking into the whole crystal tarot stuff. And initially, we were just like goofing around with it, didn't take it too seriously, but it was like an interest. Um, and over the course of the next couple of years, I got farther and farther and farther away from God, um, to the point where I was going to church on Sundays and actively practicing witchcraft the rest of the week, thinking there was nothing wrong with that, you know? And I mean, I'm not proud of what I did by any means, um, but it's just what happened. And I was doing that kind of stuff for quite a few years. And during this time, um, I would, you know, I wouldn't necessarily talk to God a lot, but I would talk to other spirits a lot. And I don't want to um, focus too much on that aspect of things. But I genuinely thought that, um, these things were good and that these things had my best interests at heart at the time. And, after a number of years, I had a dream where um, God kind of intervened and said, look, if you continue down this way, you're going to get destroyed just like your other two friends. But if you follow back after me, I'll make sure you're going to be all right. Is the gist of it. And if you guys want me to, I can do a follow-up video at some point, and just go into more detail about the God intervening part, and about a couple of the experiences that I had to kind of get me back to him. But for the purposes of this video, I just mainly want to talk about once God did get me back into the church. And it took me quite a few years to completely weed this stuff out of my life, I'll be honest. Like, it wasn't a instantaneous, I'm putting everything down at the altar at once thing. At least for me, it wasn't. But when I got back in the church, and I stopped practicing witchcraft and I stopped actively seeking after those things, and I started to, follow after him again, I was so petrified of having to be perfect. And you know, God's forgiveness covers the multitude of sins, obviously. And you know, genuine repentance and, you know, there's only one unpardonable sin. And, you know, in my mind, I was still a little confused. And so in my mind, I thought to myself, okay, this has to be the one sin you have to be perfect in. Like, I can't do this anymore. I can't slip up. Otherwise, I'm going to go to hell, you know? And as horrible as that sounds, that was my mindset for, sorry, that was my mindset for a while, for a good probably year and a half. And every time somebody would come up to me, even when I first started coming to this church, actually, you know, in a year or two after that, you know, there would be times when I was in pre-service prayer and I would be praying and I would be, you know, in the right spirit. And then it was like a flip was switched, and all of a sudden I was in the wrong spirit again. And I was terrified of that. And to be honest, for the longest time, I didn't want to get into the spirit at all because I was so afraid of slipping back into old habits. Because at some point it just became second nature, you know? But what I learned and what I want to share with you guys is that if there's anyone who has been involved in witchcraft, and if there's anyone who comes across this video that has those same fears, like you have to be perfect in this, you can't mess up, you can't, you know, you're gonna go to hell if you don't get it right every single time. And you know, if you also feel like I did, like, okay, what purpose do I have left at this point after this? You know, like I messed up so bad with this. You know, sorry, might edit that part out. Anyway, so, you know, you haven't messed up too bad for God to still use you. And I think one of the biggest turning points in my relationship with God after having moved on from witchcraft was going to, I think it was one of the hyphen camps, where Brother Rashidi Collins preached. And I had no idea who he was. But Rashidi Collins actually has a history of witchcraft as well. And, you know, in my mind, I saw, wow, God's still using him. Like, he didn't screw anything up. You know, he came back from that. And I don't think it was up until that point. I think it was after that that I finally started to realize that, hey, God really has forgiven me of this. And wow, like, there really is a little bit of grace out there for me left, you know? Um, you know, this obviously this isn't something you want to dabble in. You know, obviously it's not something you want to entertain or search for or actively go to. But if you've ever had a history of that kind of thing, or if you've ever dabbled in it, or if you've ever, you know, if your story is similar to mine, don't be so afraid of slipping back into old habits that you stop trying to reach for God and that you stop trying to do things for Him and you stop trying to do better. You know, I think there were probably 3 times since I came to this church that somebody's come up to me and kind of had to keep me in check with that. But those times are far and few between. And little by learning with the grace of God and a lot of prayer and a lot of Bible study, um, you know, I'm learning how to stay in the right vein of things and how to just really start to forgive myself for this at all. And one of the things that I never knew before, that honestly absolutely broke my heart when I found this out. I was reading a great article about moving on from this, and they said that at its core, witchcraft is about not trusting in God. And if you don't, if you do have trouble trusting in God, and if you're like me and sometimes you go back and forth with the whole "I wanna control it all" thing, it's gonna be okay. You know, hands down, God's got you, and the reason I guess I'm titling this "Loneliness of an Empty God" is because I know how it feels to think you're in a relationship with the Lord and have it be a total lie and a total, um I don't even know what the word for it is, but I know how it is to be deceived by worshiping something that you think is genuine, but is not, is I think is a good way to put it. Um, and for everyone who is still stuck in witchcraft or who doesn't know God, who's maybe actively participating in witchcraft right now, maybe you don't think that, you know, God is real or relevant or, you know, that he could ever forgive you even if you did want to turn away from this at this point. I guarantee you, and I am living proof that he can forgive you and he will forgive you. And he just wants you to come back to him. You know, I knew God and I walked away from him, and I honestly didn't think he would ever take me back, but he did. And he wants to do the same for you too.